Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back to Canucks After Dark, the January 23rd edition, the no longer head coach Bruce Boudreau edition, the Rick Tocchet edition. We got a lot to talk about tonight, Clay. But first off, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Parker, all things considered. Not a surprise what happened over the weekend. I know we're going to break it all down. But overall, I feel good. I feel optimistic. I feel hopeful. And I feel happy that you and I get to talk about all things Canucks with a few dozen of our closest friends for the next hour. So I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm good. I am a bit mixed emotionally on sort of the state of the team, and happy that the one chapter is finally ended that has been dragged out very publicly. Although there might be some people that say it wasn't public at all, and the decision was made yesterday, which of course is the truth. But yeah, it's nice that everything sort of finally happened that was said was going to happen. We get a little taste of Rick Tocchet, in front of the media this morning, especially after practice and all that for us to talk about. So definitely a lot for us to go into, including some trade speculation and all this other stuff, because we're only a month and a half away from trade deadline. The Canucks are further and further and further away from being anywhere close to a playoff spot, right? They're somewhere around 2% now. So we can, they are much closer to the Bedard watch than they are to the Stanley Cup playoffs watch, which is probably best.
And I will say, Parker, I think I'm going to blame you. I can now say the word tank without getting a funny feeling in my stomach, without having to. And it was because of you. I remember you didn't trick me, and you joked around about it with Sam on Game Over Vancouver. I think I tweeted out a title of one of our live streams here and had the word tank in it, and I didn't even delete it, whatever. And then I'm as much as I didn't want them to. I'm not an idiot. I know where we are in the standings now, and I know how far we are out of playoff spot. So they're never going to admit it. They're never going to say it themselves. But I get that every time we lose, it's better than every time we win. I actually understand that now.
This is a crazy arc that we have taken, but I'm glad to have been maybe a cause in that for sure.
There you go.
I feel like I've won. All right. So yeah, let's go over sort of the plans here. We're gonna go over the three losses, because that's what they were. Obviously the Boudreau firing, the Tocchet hiring, Gonchar, Adam Foote, Mike Yeo still being there, Bo Horvat, and sort of go over some of the things that we've heard. That Rutherford press conference, that was a bit of a debacle, and then the Tocchet's availability both yesterday and this morning or today after practice.
First practice, you got it.
A bunch of stuff. Do we want to just start with the boring stuff, the three quick losses that we can fire through?
Yeah, and much like last week, I think we can get through them pretty quickly. And I anticipate a really big show tonight. Obviously, last Monday, Jim Rutherford held court for an hour, basically, that day. And Jim Rutherford held court for another 50 minutes yesterday. So it seems like anytime Rutherford speaks, people want to come here to listen to what we have to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off with the three games. First off, Lightning in Vancouver. The skate gets freed. It's the Gino Odjick tribute night.
Yeah.
And it's also a historic night for Steven Stamkos, who scores not only his 500th NHL goal, but also his 501st and 502nd NHL goals. The least surprising storyline possible. Lightning go up 4-0 in the first. Canucks get two back halfway through the third period with a couple of power play goals. Make you think, maybe they're going to find a way to win this game and hurt themselves. But Stamkos finds the winner at the end. And Tampa Bay takes this one 5-2. As Canucks goaltenders, not looking good. Spencer Martin gets yanked after 10 shots, allowing 4 goals on 6 shots, 4 goals, 6 saves in the first period. And Colin Delia has to come in and be perfect for the rest of the night.
Two of Stamkos' goals, Parker, were very easy. One was a tap in on that first one. from Clore, and that really good pass after Ethan Bear blew a tire. And then isn't it funny? If we talked about this, as soon as one Canucks player, whether it's a forward defenseman, makes a mistake, it's like they don't know what to do. They don't know how to recover. And we saw that. And then Stamkos' second goal was nice, cutting through the crease from behind the net. And the third goal was an empty netter. So yes, 2 of his 3 goals were quite easy. Parker, this one was like, I wasn't sitting there and predicting a win just because of the tribute to Gino, just because of the skate being freed, one of the worst kept secrets around. But those were 2 pretty powerful things. And I think I'll give the Canucks presentation team credit. I wasn't at the game, but my son Sean was there. They kind of weave those together quite seamlessly because Gino, when he played here, wore the flying skate. So it was a good, solid tribute to Gino, not over the top. They're going to do more later in the year. And then there's also a good introduction to the skate. And I don't think either of them were over the top. But I did think, Parker, I did hope you give the Canucks a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. And this was a game where the goaltending was shaky, but really you look at that first Stamkos goal, that is just an absolute tap in. You look at the Kucherov goal where, he's not missing much from there, basically a free rein on a slap shot.
Yeah.
From the sort of the Pettersson spot. And then, it was over really before it started at that point. Canucks sort of came out pretty strong, but, you put yourself down 4 against Tampa Bay, even if you get 18 shots in the first period, you don't capitalize on any of them. The game's over.
Great point. So
we don't do a little interesting, but yeah.
We don't, and the Canucks even got 2 power play goals, as you mentioned. So here's the thing though, aside from what you saw on the ice in terms of play, now that you've seen them, what do you think of these third jerseys?
I think they're fine. They basically just took the old ones and then got rid of the white trim and changed the font, right? Again, that TD logo is an absolute eyesore. The splash of green on there, and the only semblance of white basically on the jersey as well is in that TD logo, which I think is not the best look. But honestly, I think they're fine. When you're watching on TV, they look basically the same because you're seeing the colors move. They look almost the same as the previous ones. The fact that they are now the permanent thirds for the foreseeable future is nice. It means you get to see them more than 5 times a year, whatever that limit was. But I mean, it's such a minor change compared to the one that they used a couple of years ago.
Right. No, that's fair. And I do like it a lot, not just because the Canucks were very generous and gave me a free one. I know you saw I got my I kind of went shameless and I just put my own name on it, Canuck Clay.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I didn't mind. This was a new jersey and I didn't mind it. All my other jerseys have named players on it. So I thought, why not just do it for the heck? Yeah, but I do like it. It looks sharp. And we'll get to see them a dozen times by the end of the year, which is pretty cool.
Yep. And then the next night, or I guess 2 nights later, they wear them again and they lose again, going to 0-2 in these jerseys as the Avalanche were in town. And again, the Canucks really just, they just got sort of run out of the building, right? They lose 4-1. I didn't really watch this game. It was sort of on in the background. But Colin Delia gets the start. He's sort of stolen the number 2 role over Spencer Martin, it seems. Even though, again, 25-29 isn't great, but this was, it was just another game to me.
Yeah. And it kind of reversed the tale. The Canucks beat Colorado 2 weeks earlier at Rogers Arena by a score of 4-2. This one, Cogliano scores. It wasn't the best pass by one of the defensemen, kind of handcuffed Miller, but Miller did give it up. Whatever, new hook to Cogliano. And then 2 power play goals for Colorado you're not going to stop Nichushkin or Rantanen very often. And then PD scored actually, Parker, with 7 minutes to go. And you thought maybe if the Canucks can get to the second intermission down 2 or even better, down by 1. But then Brad Hunt, out of all players, ex-Canuck, scores with 33 seconds left on a weird slapper knuckler from, I don't think it should have gone in, and now it's 4-1, and that's a big difference than 3-1, especially against the Canucks.
Yeah, and you knew Brad Hunt was going to get one, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so that was Friday night, and then Saturday night the Oilers are in town. Third night in the Black Skate, and now they are 0-3. As this was like the scheduled loss, right? Oh yeah, the Edmonton Oilers are coming into town. Connor McDavid comes into town at 39 goals already this year, and and it's second night of a back-to-back. You have Spencer Martin, who hasn't been great this year, and the Canucks look okay for the first 60 seconds, and then Connor McDavid just decides to do Connor McDavid things, goes and scores, and it's kind of everyone's like, okay, well, they're just going to run away with it. Canucks make it interesting, right? You get JT Miller making it 3-2 early in the third period. And then, the Canucks just trying to get something going. They don't. Nugent Hopkins scores on the empty net with about 35 seconds to go. And the Canucks go 0-3 in this last week on this homestand and fall further and further towards a top pick.
Yeah, and we can talk. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about the Bruce Boudreau thing, both the Friday and the Saturday. But let's talk about on the ice. Martin was actually okay in this game. The first two goals weren't great, but one of them is Connor McDavid going at full speed. The other one is a beautiful pass from McDavid across the crease. But those goals were more because Canucks player Tyler Myers he spoke well to the media on Thursday or Wednesday. I can't remember what it was about. I can't remember what day, but he spoke quite well. But then Friday, he just had a really bad game. He was pinching at the wrong time. He was getting beat. He was getting walked. And then, it was tough. And the one thing I will say, Parker, I was at that game and the team was at least trying. They were trying really hard. You could tell, and I know we're going to get to this, that they knew it was Bruce's last game. They wanted to win for him. And you take away that empty netter. They're in the game all the way until 3-2. That empty netter was tough because JT Miller had a pretty good game. He even scored the goal that brought them within one. But then I'm not sure you saw the highlight. It was kind of his, I'd say, lack of effort. I'm not saying that it would have stopped it, but I know Mike and I were yelling at JT Miller from our seats in 319 to wake up a little bit.
No argument there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so really quickly, I can. Anything else about the three games? Because I guess I can talk about the Boudreau effect on those weekend games. And we can talk about Boudreau firing.
I don't. Nothing else on the hockey itself, right?
Okay.
Obviously, you have that moment at the end of the game, with Boudreau on the bench that Sportsnet caught, which was emotional and again, not the best look on the organization. No. The fact that that video was the top of the hockey subreddit, by far. Obviously, the top of the Canucks subreddit. I think it was. Let me just verify really quick. I think it was something crazy high on the hockey subreddit, but it's being kind of slow to load. Yeah, it had 19,000 upvotes on the hockey subreddit.
Wow.
Which for reference is that's crazy numbers. It's like a top 20 post this year, basically.
Wow.
In the entire hockey subreddit, and obviously big on Twitter and got play everywhere. So when you get those comments from Rutherford, and we'll get to that, of course, where it's this was overblown and all, this happens with every coach. Not really, but we'll get to that.
And Friday night against Colorado, there was some audible Bruce there it is chance, about 3 or 4. And then on the broadcast, that was the one where Bruce kind of touched his heart twice and then he drops an F-bomb because he's all emotional. So that was Friday. Saturday, you're right, Parker. It was 7 or 8 Bruce there it is chance, and at the very end of the game, it was indeed 30 seconds because I filmed it. 30 seconds after the final buzzer, they were chanting Bruce there it is, and it was from my seats way up top. I saw all the Canucks fans, Canucks players, kind of huddling and not skating off. And of course, you wait for your coach to go down the tunnel first. It was because Boudreau was taking a moment to soak it all in, tearing up, looking for his wife, pointing across the other side of the arena, and then made his way down the tunnel. And Parker, it was so surreal to be in the arena because you knew that it was going to be Bruce's last game. The players knew, and he knew. And we're going to talk about the way it got handled. But very rarely does a coach know it's going to be his last game, for better or for worse. Usually he gets fired after a game or the next day on a day off, and then he doesn't even get to say bye to the fans or the team. So in a weird sort of way, this gave Bruce a chance to actually acknowledge the fans. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that it was different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was an entirely different, it's not something we ever seen before, right?
Yes.
You go back to when Travis Green was fired and it was the Canucks got blown out the previous night and there might be something coming.
Right.
But it wasn't if they lose this game, they're he's done, right? There was none of that. Or nothing especially weeks out. Literally when the morning of the game, you're seeing tweets this will be Bruce's last game. Rick Tocchet will land in Vancouver tomorrow morning. and they will have a press conference on Monday, which ended up getting moved to Sunday. But
Right.
it was also scripted and so pre-planned that like everyone saw this coming a mile away. Obviously not media driven that Bruce got fired. If it really was media driven, why wouldn't they have just been like, no, we're not firing him? Like, it's silly and then not fire him. But clearly that wasn't the case. So that was Boudreau's last game, and that basically takes us to Sunday, right?
And by the way, did you get a chance to read Boudreau's the article by Michael Russo in The Athletic yet?
I have not read that yet.
Okay, I won't spoil it too much for you, so you can read it later. But the one fascinating thing he said, well, among many fascinating things, but one thing, he booked a plane ticket for tonight. I believe he's like going to the airport right now, or at least checking in. He booked a plane ticket for tonight for him and his wife to fly back to Hershey, Pennsylvania, where they live now. But he booked it 2 weeks ago. Like, that's kind of funny, but really sad. And then he says in the article, well, obviously I could change it if I didn't have to fly out. And he wanted to change it because he didn't want to get fired. But doesn't that kind of sum everything up for us?
It makes it pretty obvious, right?
Yes.
That was, he saw the date coming, right?
Oh, it's crazy.
I thought his comments, after the game, where he took a bit of a shot as well, where he said, they've got Columbus, Seattle, and New Jersey next, and maybe that's part of the reason why I'm gone now, right? 3 easier opponents, although Seattle's doing well and New Jersey's doing fine too. But it's saying hey, 3 easier opponents that are pretty beatable teams for the Canucks. Or sorry, it was Chicago, not New Jersey. The New Jersey games after that, but. Yeah, right. Chicago, Seattle, Columbus. Chicago's not doing well. One of the worst teams in the league. Columbus is the worst team in the league, and Seattle is a wild card basically. It was everyone saw it coming. He saw it coming. He took a bit of a shot on the way out, which I think everybody liked except management and sort of the old boys club. We saw some. I think one tweet from somebody that said the old boys club in hockey management isn't happy with how Bruce, handled this and all this stuff. It's like, well, you're going to lose in the court of public opinion at that point.
Yes. And Bruce, I think, I can't speak for you, but I think Bruce handled himself pretty darn well, given all the opportunities he had to fire back or to say, this is stupid, or I don't know what's going on. Oh, he kind of said that, but overall, I thought he handled himself with a lot of class, took the high road, and he will likely continue to do so going forward.
Yeah, he was just honest, right? And that was sort of always his MO, right? He was honest and he was endearing himself to fans, and maybe that is partially calculated, right? Get everyone on your side and, against, the big bad management, which is pretty easy to hate on, especially in Vancouver, right? The management / ownership group. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's a little calculated, but doesn't seem to be too much calculated in Boudreau's repertoire historically. So, everyone was sort of, everyone was on his side for the most part. You look at the majority, like people run Twitter polls and it was like 90-10 in favor of Boudreau. So, I think it was a pretty cut and dry that no one was really a fan of the way he was treated. And even, I was in Victoria for a hockey tournament this weekend and just talking with some of the guys on my hockey team who are more, normal Canucks fans, right? Like guys who aren't, on Twitter all day, every day, engaging in arguments and things like that. And just like what their thoughts are. And a lot of them were like, I'm fine with them firing Boudreau, but it's kind of whack how they've, strung it along like this for so long. And I was kind of in the same boat, right? Yeah. If you want to fire Boudreau, you have every right to do so. And I would understand why. The team's been underperforming. It's kind of an easy move to make. Less so on the hiring of Tocchet, but we'll get to that. But it's sort of the general consensus was like, fine with firing him, not fine with how it was done.
Were you surprised, Parker, that Trent Cull was let go, yet Mike Yeo and Jason King stayed?
Yeah, I thought that was odd, especially Mike Yeo. Because from all sort of accounts, Mike Yeo doesn't seem to be there doesn't seem to be a lot of good PR around Mike Yeo. It's been just sort of constant, constant letdowns with Mike Yeo. and I don't know exactly what it is about him, and most people don't know exactly what it is about him that everyone seems to, or that like seems to keep landing him in roles. But it seems odd for a new coach to be able to bring in two guys with him
Yeah.
and also have two previous guys left over at the same time.
Yeah, so Trent Cull obviously came up from Abbotsford, so that was not a Rutherford guy. Jason King has been here for years, we know that, so not a Rutherford guy. And Mike Yeo was, right? Or was Yeo hired after Rutherford? Yeah, he must have been. I have no clue.
I think so, maybe.
If it's after December 8th, then it is.
I can check that pretty quick here.
Thank you. I know you're fast.
July 1st, 22.
Oh yeah, of course. So it's like 6 months later. Okay, so no wonder he's still here. Yeah, but I was or maybe they couldn't. I don't know. Yeah, I was surprised that Jason King wasn't canned. Actually, I was surprised.
Yeah, it does seem odd. Yeah, you hear all these things about like, yeah, the management wants to have one of their guys on coaching staffs, right? And maybe that's who Yo is, but also at the same time, like you just made Rick Tocchet your guy, right? Right. So you're kind of tied to the same horse. You now have your coach. If you are Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, you have, everyone gets one firing of a guy that you didn't bring in usually, or even the first guy you brought in. But now you've used that up, right? You have your guy. You have tied yourself to this wagon, a wagon that hasn't had much success historically, on a team that hasn't had much success in a while. But we'll see how that ends up.
Yeah, that wagon doesn't have good wheels right now. Lucas, thank you for the $10 donation. Remember this, we've gone through hell and back as Canucks fans. We can have our opinions, and all our opinions are valid. It's an unfortunate season, and we have to respect that. Indeed. Thank you, Lucas. Wise words. Thank you for the support, as always. And I have seen some chatter going back and forth. Some people trying to dunk on others for calling the tank from a few months ago. That's fine. You guys, yes, express your opinion. But as always, we expect it to be done respectfully. And that's all that Parker and I ask.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lucas. Yes, very good. Okay, so then Trent Cull gets fired. Bruce Boudreau gets fired. Culleton, I thought maybe was being groomed, but I guess not. Or maybe he's still going to be the successor to Tocchet after 3 years. Who knows? Before we talk about the new guys coming in, anything else about Boudreau leaving? Anything else about Trent Cull? Oh, by the way, Bruce Boudreau's wife, Crystal, sent out a tweet. A couple people have highlighted it, saying thank you for the 13 months. Man, when you say 13 months, that's not, well, I guess it's not long. It doesn't seem long, does it?
No, it wasn't. I mean, you think about it, it was last December, right?
Yeah.
December 2021. It was really just 1 year. And we had that great stretch, and then we had the bad stretch, but that great stretch was enough. And it's easy to see why it was, right? Because it's not like the team got worse under Boudreau. Technically, I think record-wise, maybe they slightly did, but also like the roster didn't get much better, right? So I think everyone sort of saw that, and he made himself the good guy in that scenario.
Yeah. I like your point too, when you said, and this is the kind of thing I've been talking about with a lot of my friends too, Parker, is if Rutherford just kept his mouth shut and let the season play out, and we knew that Boudreau wasn't his guy. He said as much on July, at the end of the last season in May, when he said, no, he's not going to extend Bruce because he's going to make him adhere to the contract he signed. Then later in the year, he says, I want them to play with more structure and whatever it may be. So if he didn't say anything, you're right. The fans maybe even demanded a change if the Canucks continue to play poorly. Penalty kills suck. Defense no good. Some of that you can point to coaching for sure. So, or would it just ran its course, but then maybe you're worried you're not going to get Rick Tocchet. I don't know. It's just, that's the tricky part, I guess.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to see the point.
Yeah.
Right. Like, as you're getting at, like, what is the, best and worst case for making this move now the way they did, right? Mm-hmm. Is it, like, what's best case for the team? Is it that they get worse and get a better draft pick under Tocchet? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it that they get more time under Tocchet to develop their system going into next year?
Right.
Is it that they get a bump from a new coach going into, these games and having the, I think, 27th hardest schedule the rest of the way for the rest of the season, right? One of the easiest schedules in hockey. And they get, a bump and then don't end up at 27th in the league, maybe end up at 23rd in the league, and we're talking about the 10th overall pick now instead of the 6th.
Awesome.
Like I don't get it. Like you could just ride it out the rest of the year. Boudreau sails off into the sunset at the end of the season. They even maybe Rutherford even comes out and says, hey, we're going to be going a different direction at coach next year. But let's celebrate what Bruce has done for the team. He gets a big standing ovation in the last game of the season, and everyone's happy. And then they hire Rick Tocchet, the next day, and then everything's good, everything's happy. Instead, they decide to just have an absolute PR debacle of all right, we got to get this guy in now, and we got to have everyone know it 3 weeks in advance so that everyone can hate us. and they just got turned on for no reason. Like they just threw themselves under the bus for Rick Tocchet of all people, right? A guy who has barely had a season above 500 as a coach in the NHL. Now, again, not that his record or not that his rosters were great, but neither's this one.
Yep.
So, it just is so bizarre to me.
Yes. By the way, not bizarre. Thank you, Lucas, for another donation, $5. And you have to take this. I don't know what Roman numeral that is. 67? No.
It's 48. Yeah. Rule 48.
I'm so bad. Wait, 10.
I think he put 47, but the hat is 48.
Okay.
Right. For Super Bowl 48.
And who is that?
Seahawks over the Broncos.
Oh, that was so they're at like 50, whatever, 55 now or something?
Something like that. 56, 57, somewhere
so
along there.
Awesome. Do I recognize the Super Bowl hat, Parker? Is that intentional or not is the question.
No, I was just going through my old hats and I found this one and I thought I'd wear it.
And I would love to wear a hat, but it makes me look like a 4-year-old boy, so I will never wear a hat.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Lucas.
Thank you.
Oh man. We can get to anything else about Boudreau you want to? Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But we talked about Tocchet last week and sort of, I think I expressed my opinions pretty well. And I don't think they've really changed other than the fact that we've now had a press conference of Rick Tocchet. And obviously the availability from this morning. I didn't listen to the press conference yesterday. I was on the ferry home.
Yep.
But I did listen to his availability from today, like the 8-minute or so availability from Tocchet. I was fine with it.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people in the comments like, oh, wow, so intriguing, so interesting. But, I don't know what you're supposed to say as a coach or as anyone in hockey that's not cliche, because that's all it is.
Yeah.
But he does seem to be going with the pairs mentality, which you could see right off the bat with the lineup, right?
Yeah.
Studnicka on the top line with 2 good players, right? It's like, okay, well, they're putting Petey and Kuzmenko together, and they're putting, they're doing all the groups of 2 and then having someone else on the side.
Yeah. Horvat, Besser, and Miller Garland. That's right.
Yeah. I think we've sort of liked that philosophy historically, and I think most coaches now do as well. So, fine with that. We then see Gonchar and Adam Foote. We saw Gonchar having a long talk with Quinn Hughes today, which again, looking at that, it's hard not to be a little excited. Again, I don't want to be optimistic really right now, but you're like, oh, well, that's a good guy to have teaching Quinn Hughes stuff.
Totally.
And suddenly you start to think of, not a lot of maybe coaching experience and a lot of like coaching expertise, which is a little worrying to me. But you just look at the names and you're like, oh, well, you've got some excellent players in Rick Tocchet, Adam Foote, Sergei Gonchar, the Sedins, Cami Granato, all these names that you're like, well, these are all like excellent hockey players. Who knows about if they're great coaching,
right? But a 2005 All-Star team right there. No.
Yeah, some elite hockey players though.
Yeah. I agree with you. And there's something you kind of hinted at, and I wanted to express. Because of who Bruce Boudreau is and how much people love him, no matter what Rick Tocchet does, I think he's going to be unfairly not get a fair shake to start off. Now, he seems like the type who doesn't care. He's just going to do his thing. And this is going to be good, I think, for the Canucks in the long run. I really do. He's going to build a culture. He's going to build habits. He's going to build structure, all those things that we know Rutherford and LV want. But I've already seen it. And you hinted it. You nailed it so perfectly, actually, when people were being sarcastic about his 7.5 minute press conference, which I thought was or media availability, which thought was quite good. He's a good speaker. He's clear, good enough. He's clear in what he's trying to do, and he's not afraid to explain what he's trying to do. But you're right. People are being sarcastic. Oh, how riveting. Oh, wow. This is so earth shattering. Whatever. It's just whatever Tocchet does. I think he's going to have an uphill battle, and that's not his fault. And is it sympathy? I don't know, but I do feel for him. I think it's going to be, if he can recognize that, then I think he'll be stronger for it. But I've already seen it. I guess is my point.
Yeah, and it's another thing that again just doesn't make sense as to why this was done right now. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and the way it was done, right? Like, you have soured the fan base, and then now you're throwing this guy to the wolves. And yeah, again, I thought he was well spoken and seemed, fairly likable, and said most of the right things. But yeah, you are now replacing a fan favorite the next day, right? It's a tough situation. It seemed like a really dumb situation that he has been hoisted into by Rutherford for the most part, that again seemed to be entirely avoidable, for the most part.
Yeah. And then, I like what you said about, one thing that Rutherford said I meant to, is he's both in Sunday's press conference and today's, he talked about how he doesn't want his star players playing too many minutes, and he wants his bottom six guys to be truly the penalty killers, as they usually are on good teams. So that's going to be a really interesting kind of philosophical switch I'm looking forward to seeing. Is he able to hold back a bit on PD, Horvat, Miller, so on and so forth? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And I've really liked the idea of having Pettersson on the penalty kill because he is so smart and he is so good at it.
Yeah.
I also understand the idea of, every minute that he's out there on the penalty kill is one less minute that he's out there creating scoring chances for the most part, right? And I can say all I want about how good of a penalty killer Elias Pettersson is. Canucks have the worst penalty kill in the league. And at this point, something's got to give there. The problem is we've seen it be the worst penalty kill in the league under two coaches at this point, right? Under Travis Green and Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah.
So, is it a roster problem? Is it a coaching problem? It doesn't seem like it can only be a roster problem because they've had like 4 different sets of penalty killers over the last 2 years and nothing has worked. So hopefully they kill some penalties, but maybe not too many this year. Let's maybe hold off until 2023-24.
And I know you mentioned that you were on the ferry coming back from Victoria on the Sunday. So they had I'm sure you saw, they had the 3 guys up there, Tocchet, Alvin, and Rutherford. And Rutherford, he certainly gives us a lot to talk about. And of course, along with the whole, you guys caused the speculation, you guys caused the noise. It wasn't that. So that was obviously, I think, the biggest talking point. But even one funny thing he said, Parker, you might have heard this. He says he's going to zip it. He's not going to talk anymore because he actually felt bad. He said he didn't apologize to Bruce there. He said, I will apologize to Bruce and to anyone else I offended if me speaking honestly was taken the wrong way. And I've often talked about how I love Rutherford, how transparent he is. It's such a, actually Benning was transparent too. He just wasn't I shouldn't insult his intelligence. He just didn't run the team well. I'll put it like that. But Rutherford said he's going to leave the hockey talk now to Alvin and Tocchet. So there's one talk about, well, what was one of the issues with Bruce? Oh, he didn't develop the young players like he doesn't say Podkolzin. He puts the S in he said Podkolzin, whatever. He said Podkolzin Höglander did not develop. And then he stopped himself and he said, but I said, I'm not going to talk about this. And then Patrick Alvin basically said the same thing. So one revelation from Rutherford is that he's not going to be as present or transparent in the media.
Yeah. Well, yeah, apparently the solution, if you keep saying dumb things, is to stop talking. Like it's like, wow, yeah, no, it's not that the media is taking your words and misconstruing them. It's that you keep saying, you start off pretty strong and then you turn around and say something dumb to mess it up, right? And that's what we did see, yesterday on a couple occasions, right? So yeah, that whole throwing it all at the media's feet and all this stuff. And then Alvin saying that like he came to this decision, last night or this morning, but somehow Rick Tocchet's there at 1 p.m. It's being open and honest, but also just like twisting the truth consistently. And it's really hard to get people on your side when, you have that stark contrast between, Jim Rutherford, who's, sort of this like double speak of that he's pulling. And then you have Bruce Boudreau, who's like this chipper, open and honest, emotional guy. And
Yep.
even if, Rutherford is maybe being just a little bit shady, you have that hard contrast to Boudreau being the exact opposite that just emphasizes, Rutherford's sort of, I don't even know the word to say it, but you understand. So it's just like, I just don't get it. It's just terrible PR, really.
Are you willing to give Tocchet a chance from a standpoint of, do you have any preconceived biases about him?
Yeah, I think it was I think it's a weird choice, right? But most of my ill will towards the weird bad choice, in my opinion, isn't towards Tocchet. It's towards the people who hired him, right? Rick Tocchet didn't decide to, to lose in Arizona, right? And he's not trying to lose here, right? It's like think of Louis Eriksson, right? I don't hate Louis Eriksson. I hate the contract he was signed to, and I dislike Jim Benning for signing that contract. And it's sort of the same thing here, right? Do I think Rick Tocchet is the best guy for this job? Well, based on the information that we have and based on his history and his historical record, no, right? He hasn't shown that he is going to be the savior here, right? Maybe he will be. I would love it if he is, right? And I will be rooting for Rick Tocchet because I want this team to be good. And this team's so much more fun to talk about when they are good, obviously.
Yes.
So I am, of course, cheering for Rick Tocchet. However, I have the opinion that it is unlikely that Rick Tocchet will do much for this team. It was the same after the Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade. I said, basically, I don't like the trade. I don't think it's going to work out, but I really want it to. I really want Ekman-Larsson to succeed. Same thing after the Miller contract was signed. I think it's a bad deal, but I really hope it works out, right? I hope I'm wrong. And this is another case where I just hope I'm wrong. The problem is we haven't been wrong enough. They're still not a good hockey team, unfortunately. And I cannot wait for the day that I am eating my hat after the Canucks have a fantastic season under Rick Tocchet.
Eating your hat, your shorts, your shoes, everything, because they're so good. But we don't want that to happen until next year. And so here's the other thing I wanted to bring up, Parker. Could we, you mentioned that we have the 27th easiest schedule, or go the other way, the 32, 31, 20. Yeah, the sixth hardest, easiest schedule of all teams. So what happens? Oh my gosh, Parker, what happens if Tocchet reels off the Canucks went 7 wins in a row, then they overtime lost, then they won their 9th. So they got points in 9 straight games when Boudreau started the Boudreau bump. What happens if they do that? And exactly what you said, go from 27th overall to 23rd or 4th overall, and essentially move from a elite pick to a pretty good pick. Crazy. Madness, I say.
I'll just be frustrated, right? And it'll be like, who could have seen this coming? Because it happened last time, and it happens all the time. This team goes on runs late in the year when you need them to not go on runs late in the year, and they ruin their draft position. Every chance that happens again, and it'll look great for Rick Tocchet. And like Boudreau hinted at, Canucks have an easy schedule, right? These next 3 games, especially. The Canucks have never lost to Seattle, have they? Right?
No, they haven't.
Like the Chicago is atrocious. Columbus is even worse. Like this could quite easily be 3 quick wins for the Canucks, and now Rick Tocchet looks like the savior, and then they end up, how many games do they have left? 36 games left. The Canucks win 20 of them, and now they're looking like, they won 38 games this year. They're not that bad when they are, right? And that's just not the reality I'm looking forward to.
That's funny how Boudreau even mentioned he had the stat ready. The last 12 teams he played have a 610 points percentage, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had all his bullets ready in his chamber for sure. Oh man. This is gonna be so interesting. I'm going to the game tomorrow, Parker, celebrating Lunar New Year, and I always like to get to that game. So it's the only bowling week I'm missing this week because I want to be at tomorrow's game, and it just so happens to be Rick Tocchet's first game. So I'm very curious actually to see the crowd reaction.
I will be tuned in to that one for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, and then some other quotes. We had, there was that Forbes article that came out before Boudreau got fired, right? Which is crazy, right? Like that's one of those things that, like, I bet Aquilini reads that, right? An article in Forbes, and some pretty hard quotes in there, right? Quote: "This unfolding situation illustrates the shallowness of their leadership abilities and lack of character. Rutherford and the Aquilini family should be ashamed of themselves. Why would anyone want to play in Vancouver?" Like, that's in Forbes. Pretty hard hitting. And then this morning, Frank Saravalli comes out and says, quote, "I have it on really good authority, crystal clear, impeccable sourcing, that they wanted to make this coaching change months ago and weren't given the green light by ownership." So, once again, ownership meddling. And again, media being pretty much correct, right? Like, they wanted to get, Rutherford didn't even know he was under contract for this year. And Aquilini doesn't want to pay 3 coaches at once, which he's now doing anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, all the quotes coming right back at Rutherford and Alvin.
Oh, that Saravalli one's fascinating. So, Parker, do you think if they pulled the trigger back in November, which is what everyone's pointing to when there was that first set of rumors, if they had done that, obviously then we don't have the Bruce twisting in the wind. We don't have the recent Rutherford comments. If they make that change back in November, do you think it's better received? Or is it people saying, "Oh man, he didn't have a chance. We only got to coach for a month this year." What do you think?
Yeah, it would have been bad in a different way, right? Again, because I'm like, wow, but his whole, resume has been good while he was here. But at the same time, again, it's most people aren't upset with moving on from Boudreau.
Yep.
Most people are upset with the way that it happened, right? If it had just been a quick, all right, pull the plug, move on. Again, one of the, now seems like a pretty decent time to have done it, but just in a much different way. And then again, I think the PR would have been so much better. But they're not concerned with PR. Technically, it's not their job to be concerned with PR. Although Aquilini should care about the PR because it's going to cost him money, most likely. That's why PR is a thing. Yeah. But yeah, it is just bizarre the way that it was handled. And you would think if it was done, let's say back in November, again, if it was a quick change, like, hey, we've moved on from him, we've hired this other guy, it is done. Yes. And we're moving on. It wouldn't have been, 3 weeks of talk about it, right? Yeah. Because it's been 3 weeks to a month of people. That's all that people have been talking about because it's been obvious this has been happening. And now we talk about it going forward, right? They haven't even played a game under Rick Tocchet. And we have had weeks of takes about Boudreau getting fired before it even happened. So it's just been prolonging the entire process.
Check this out. So November 8th, so 2 months ago, that was when Rutherford went on Sportsnet 650 with Satya Shah and Dan Riccio. I just want to read you 2 quotes. And my point is, I have a feeling that Rutherford is not going to be saying this about Rick Tocchet. "I didn't like our training camp, and we continued into the early part of the season the same way our training camp was. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but in order for us to be a better team, we had to play with a stronger system and really be more accountable for more of the things that some of the players are struggling with." And this was when, Rutherford basically ripped the loose play of the Canucks under Boudreau then. And I think Tocchet is kind of the counter to that in the way that he coaches, the way he's already been talking about structure and culture and systems and everything. And yes, and the book on Tocchet is kind of the opposite of this team. Tocchet's teams don't score a lot, but they defend better. They're not perfectly, but they defend better, whereas this team obviously scored a lot and couldn't defend to save their lives.
Yeah, my fear is that we get the exact same performance with a lot less goals, right?
Right.
And that was
less entertaining. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, they're still going to win 32 games over the course of a season. They're just going to score 80 less goals and allow 80 less goals, right? That doesn't make me happier, right? That's more boring and maybe a little bit better for my heart, but the swings, but it doesn't help, right? If you're getting the same record, you're getting the same record. And I would much rather see, guys like Horvat score 60 goals or see Elias Pettersson get 100 and something points and Quinn Hughes get 80 points, right? At least we have the small victories to go on instead of a team that's like really good defensively. And maybe we're like, oh, well, at least Demko put up a 909 this year, right? And Pettersson had 60 points and Horvat has 60 points and Miller has 55 points, right? Like at least we're getting some of the fun even in these games where they're losing. But yeah, I think if there's no improvement, but it's just less goals for, less goals against, I'm not really seeing that as much of a win.
Right. And good points all. And obviously Rutherford wants the team to concentrate on defense. That's why they brought in Gonchar and Foote. So when you look at it, if you didn't know anything about the drama, anything about the media, anything about the talk, that's a pretty good trade. Boudreau and Cull for Tocchet, Gonchar, and Foote. I would take that every single day.
Ice? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
In an alumni game, you got a heck of a hockey team. Yeah. Again, big fan of Gonchar and Adam Foote. Those are hires that I look at and I'm like, well, again, it just seems like more good hockey players to have in the dressing room, right? More people that know their stuff about hockey to go alongside the Sedins, and maybe share some of their knowledge with the team. But again, from a coaching perspective, a little bit less so, right?
Sure. If we're going to allow a few minutes for people to chat, we should probably get to your other topic that you put in the in the title. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know about this. So I'm all ears, brother.
Yeah, I got a little, maybe a little clickbaity on it, but Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat, the obvious trade target, right, for the Vancouver Canucks, number one on most trade boards, and for obvious reason, right? A guy who's on an expiring contract, a nice and cheap contract for this year, just $5.5 million. A guy who already has 30 goals this season, on pace for like 55, 49 points, over a point per game, a leader, a centerman, XYZ, obvious trade piece. And we've heard that basically every team is involved, right? We've heard Carolina, we've heard Detroit, we've heard Boston. Seattle, we've heard Boston, we've heard every single team that is anybody has been calling on Bo Horvat, and that is their job. They should be, right? If you're a GM of a contending team, your job is to make calls on players who are available, even if you think they're going to be at a rear price range. Maybe they aren't. So lots of names get floated around, obviously. And then Irfan Ghaffar tweeted out, if you're a GM and you want to improve your hockey club, you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't call the Canucks on Bo Horvat. The price is steep, and there have been over a handful of teams. Over a handful is a weird term. There have been over a handful of teams with very serious interest, especially within the last week. Now, this was tweeted out on Friday, so last week and a half at this point. And then John Bucci-Gross, who is obviously a broadcaster. I think he's with ESPN at this point, but pretty well connected in the hockey world. And he just tweets out 3 thinking emojis and just a picture of Shane Wright. And it's one of those things that's like, everyone's like, please don't give us hope on this, because if Shane Wright is involved, if you're the Canucks, that is like a dream scenario, right? The only downside is you're trading Horvat within division, but also the Kraken are then trading Shane Wright within division. So who cares? And I don't know what it would take. It would probably involve some more on the Canucks side, I would imagine. But if you have an offer that's starting with Shane Wright, I think you should be taking that and running.
Yeah, a right shot center who was projected to go number 1 in the draft fell down to 4, and we know he's gonna play with a chip on his shoulder already. So, yeah, when I saw that title, Parker, when we were preparing for the show, I got excited, and then I had no clue what you're talking about. So,
yeah, I mean, you look at where Seattle lies currently right now. If I pull up the old standings, I mean, they're second in the Pacific Division with 2 games in hand on Vegas. Right?
Wow.
We're talking about a team that could very, very well be first in the Pacific Division this year, right? That's where they're projected by The Athletic. They have the highest odds of making the playoffs in the entire Pacific Division.
Wow.
So if we're talking about a team that is, potentially a true contender right now, which no one saw coming into this year, especially not me, But I mean, they're on a 641 point pace, right? That is on pace for, as my computer breaks. Nope, that doesn't work. 82 times 0.64 times 2. 105 points.
Yep.
105 point pace, right? A true, top hockey team. At this point, where are they? They're ninth in points and like eighth in points percentage, but they could be a contender and they could be looking to make a rental hockey trade, right? Especially if they're wanting to re-sign a guy like Horvat.
Right.
So one of those things where if somewhat random people had been like suggesting on Twitter, like, oh, Horvat for Shane Wright, I'd be like, okay, that's dumb. Seattle would never do that. So when you have a guy who is as well connected as, Boudreau is, just sort of tweeting that out of the blue, like it seems like such a random thing that it's like, oh, maybe that's something that is being tossed around. But who knows?
Yeah. I like Jarhead said, Shane Wright is a young Horvat. If Kraken are dumb enough to do it, then make it.
Yeah.
I like it. Oh, by the way, Lucas, the third donation. Thank you, Lucas. Heard Gonchar and Hughes were chatting during practice. Very interesting development. Yes, thank you. Parker did mention that earlier in the show. But yeah, if anytime that our star defenseman can learn from yet another star defenseman, that can only help. So we agree, Lucas. I think that can only be a good thing for Quinn Hughes, for sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
All right. So we got 10 minutes left. If you guys want to ask some questions, get your comments in before we do wrap up. If you are still here, by the way, hit the like button and make sure you are subscribed to Canucks After Dark. And you can also find me on Twitter at ParkersPucks, Clay on Twitter at Canuck Clay. So go give us a follow if you haven't already.
I see 166 people in the chat.
There are a lot of you guys in here. It is a big week. So yeah, this is a good time to get those comments in. Jay saying that Wright has not played an NHL game since December 6th, 2022. That's just kind of the way it works. You can only play once you play 9 NHL games, or maybe it's 10. You can't get sent back to the OHL, and they wanted him to get development time in the OHL. So that's why he is down there.
Taylor, we love the fact that you love these streams. Thank you. We love doing them for sure. Let's get to Edmonds. Do you think it might be best for Demko to sit out the rest of the season and come back fresh next year? I do know, Edmund, that the Canucks will be in absolutely no rush to bring Demko back. Don't wait till he's 100%, 110%. Wait till he's like 800% ready to go and then bring him back in. No, I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but they did say there's no need to rush him in. There's no need.
Yeah, it's there's no point, right? You need everything to go right for Thatcher Demko. You need him to be perfect coming into next year if you want to improve at all, because the Canucks goaltending has been an absolute sore spot this year. And it started with Demko not playing well from the beginning of the season, and whether he had something lingering or if that just happened in the middle completely randomly. Either way, you're not a team that is, you're not a team that is in fourth in the Pacific trying to make a playoff push, right? Yes. You're not a team that's going to benefit from having Thatcher Demko in the lineup. So, the only benefit to having Demko back is having him play more games and maybe winning more games. And you want to sit him out as long as humanly possible. Because at this point, you want to lose games, or at least we do.
Yes. Yep. And then let Delia and Martin fight it out as they've been doing for the past 2 months.
Yeah, that is totally good.
Yeah. Awesome. Lucas, another donation. Thank you, Lucas. I know it's been a week since the last Canucks After Dark and the boys unveiled their new thirds, but I wonder both your thoughts on the new skate jerseys. Yeah, Lucas, I think you may have missed this part as well, or maybe you just popped in late, which is totally cool. But we actually did talk about the jerseys for a couple minutes. Short version, Parker mostly likes them, and I really like them. But yes, thank you once again for the donation. Once again, we appreciate it.
TD logo sucks.
That too.
But you don't really notice it during the game.
They do stand out though, that green right on the black.
It is, and especially in like the pictures after, like whenever the Canucks Twitter posts like the close up pictures, like the good photography during the game, it's like, oh, that's green, right in the middle.
Here's a question from Edmund. Do you think Spencer Martin has gotten worse every game? It's like they're going top corner on him. They do have a book on him now. He's played enough games where scouts and opposing coaches, they can kind of put together enough film now. And you go high glove on Martin for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think he's gotten worse, Parker, or do you think it's just the nature of?
He's definitely gotten worse than he was last year.
Yeah.
And I don't think the book is enough to change that, right?
Right.
I don't think that takes you from a 940 or whatever he was to an 880. That's just not how it works. But I don't think it's helping, right? Teams actually can scout, and if he's got a weak spot, and all it takes is the video coach to show it for 5 minutes before the game, say, hey, look, this is where his weakness is, shoot there, and it's going to have an impact, right?
Yes. Are you worried at all? Speaking of Martin, let's say Demko comes back 100%. He's all good for next season. Martin will be fine for a backup, correct? Or It'll
be fine. I'm in the mindset of see what's available, see what's out there. Again, there's no reason to really commit yourself that far ahead if you don't need to. If you have the ability to upgrade, do so. But this team doesn't really have cap space, so I don't see it really happening.
Right.
Kai asks, who do you guys think will get the biggest bump under Tocchet? Saying that he could really see Podkolzin and Garland flourishing under him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the Garland part for sure, because Garland played very well in Arizona under Tocchet. And I would also say that you saw it kind of today when Rick Tocchet puts his first stamp on the team. And Parker, you and I talked about these pairs of P.D. Kuzmenko, Horvat, Besser, Old Faithful, and then Miller with Garland. And we've heard already Rick Tocchet on both days talk about how much he thinks JT Miller can properly focused JT Miller can be a huge part of this team. Put him at center today, and who was on his wing? Connor Garland. So I do agree. I think Garland should get a bump. Yeah.
Jack Studnicka, the obvious pick, as he was getting some first line ice time today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do sort of agree. It's the people who have been struggling really for me. Because that usually does seem to be the case, right? Some people will do worse, some people will do better. Someone like OEL, although the legs just aren't there anymore, it would be nice if there's some sort of positive impact there. Again, Connor Garland, a pretty easy candidate potentially. I'd sort of go that same direction.
Really interesting comment from C Edits here. Thoughts on how objective the interview process is when Rutherford and Alvin search for candidates? Because Alvin said, as part of his presser yesterday, Parker, that he interviewed I can't remember if he used the term few or handful, but he intimated that it was more than two. I don't know if that's true. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I missed that part, but
yeah.
I always feel like in these coaching searches, I feel like they've usually got a guy in mind from the beginning. Because you're not going to learn too much from these interviews for the most part, I don't think. So, who knows?
Sure, that's fair. I'm just looking something up. Go ahead and take the next one.
All right, let me scan here. I had one that I liked and then I lost it, which is great. I thought I saw one about. Nope, I got nothing.
Okay. Well, I'll say this because it just saved me from typing this out. Tyler asked about meeting me at the game tomorrow. Section 317, second intermission. I guess anyone else who's at the game can come see me then. I don't know why you didn't want to come see me, but Tyler, 317, that's the Olympic display. I'll meet you there in the second intermission. Thanks, Parker, for letting me get that in.
Perfect. No worries. We already did talk about Demko a bit.
Yeah.
Edmund asking about, the take on Studnicka on the top line. I think it's a temporary, right? Like who knows if that's even how they skate tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Could just be, trying him out in practice. Maybe he doesn't like what he sees, moves him around. Just sounds to me like he even mentioned in the media availability, like he doesn't know anything about him. So he's getting a look. If he does well, makes the DiPietro trade look good. I mean, I think it's hard for the DiPietro trade to look bad no matter what. Because I don't think DiPietro is ever playing another NHL game.
Yes,
which is harsh, but most likely true. So you have a guy playing NHL games for a guy who probably was never going to. It's a hard trade to really look bad.
Right. And let's end with this one from Justin. Thoughts on the slight lies during the press conference by management? Is it offensive to us as a fan base by making us look dumb? How can Alvin and JR say they made the decisions that morning? Tocchet, teleport. Yeah, I think a lot of fans saw through a lot of what they said. I know that Rutherford and Alvin, they're trying to think on their feet. They're trying to make sure that the stories align as they're talking about. Case in point, we had a meeting with Bruce 4 weeks ago, says one of them. We had a meeting with Bruce 6 weeks ago, says whatever. Like, I don't worry about that kind of stuff. But Justin, I think what you're getting is the overall vibe is we want to be able to trust our management. We want to be able to trust them when they speak. And I think they went a long way to breaking or to weakening that trust. And I think that is a fair sentiment from Canucks fans.
Yeah, it's with how open and honest Rutherford had been from the start. I think that was a good look at the beginning, right? Under his tenure, I think it was like, oh, he's gonna be pretty blunt and open and honest and all this stuff. And then, yeah, over the last month, really, we've heard, all the rumblings that they're trying to get rid of Boudreau and all this stuff, which all turned out to be correct, right? So that damages, their trustworthiness.
Yeah.
And then, the sort of the double speak that we saw, even just yesterday of, we made this decision, we just came to this decision that morning, right? When it was like, oh, weird that, everyone said it was Tocchet for weeks then, and that, oh, Tocchet got there. Oh, and Tocchet technically or apparently had a 4-week out clause on his TNT contract, but you just came to it this morning. Oh, and Boudreau already had booked his plane ticket out for 2 days later.
That's
and
true.
Like there's way too many coincidences for you to have been telling the truth, right? And maybe it was a language thing, but it's one of those things that you hear all the time, like, I made the decision this morning, right? That's what every single GM always says after a coach gets fired. There's just too many coincidences for that to have possibly been true.
Right.
And it's just like, it's like you're talking to a fan base that is a very, very devoted fan base that knows their stuff, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of media in this market and a lot of, even fan-based media, ourselves included, that follow everything really closely and are watching the rest of the league to see what's going on and keep up to date online, right? This isn't 20 years ago where, you're reading the Province on Tuesday mornings to get your updates on the team, right? Or you keep watching the same 30 minutes of Sports Center over and over, or Sportsnet Connect or whatever it was. And you're just seeing the same 1 hour of highlights over and over again and getting that slight little snippet that might change every once in a while, right? We have constant updates, constant discussion online and everywhere that people are really well informed. And when you sort of take that and blatantly skew the truth, people are going to pick up on it and not take well to it.
Well said. And that's why Boudreau loves his hockey market. That's why Rick Tocchet has already said one of the reasons he wanted to be here, passionate and knowledgeable fan base. And I think the more that people recognize that and respect that, the better everything will be. Great. Well said. Well said.
Excellent. All right, folks, we are going to wrap up there. And a quick note, there will be no show next week, I don't believe. Are going into All-Star Week. I'm busy, so we're going to take the week off. Unless Clay does a show with someone else, then that is fine. But yeah, other than that, Clay, any parting words this evening?
Yeah, next week, likely no show. The week after that, we're figuring that out as we speak. So just stay tuned to our socials and we'll make a post. And another great show, a massive show. I for one, I'm willing to give Rick Tocchet the benefit of the doubt. I'm excited to see him last night. And if you're not sick of Canucks talk, you're welcome to join me in about 10 minutes. I'll be continuing some more chat if you want to join me on my own show later on. But Parker, this was great once again, as always.
Yeah, and if you missed any part of it, feel free to rewind back to the meeting here on YouTube, or you can find it on your favorite podcast platform. It'll be up in a matter of 10, 15 minutes or so. You can find me on Twitter at ParkersPucks. You can find Clay on Twitter at Canuck Clay. You guys know how that all works at this point. But yeah, hope you all have a good night. You can go join Clay's stream shortly. And other than that, have a good week.